I wanted a Roomba for Christmas. I was disappointed. Made me think of all the disappointments I've had in life, and I think the greatest disappointment was the time I tried to impress the Goth girl. Yeah, because when I was young, I was infatuated with this Goth girl. She was just ravishing. She was all corsets and lace and hair the color of midnight and eyes like emeralds, and I was a dork. I had no idea what I could do that would make her attracted to me. So I thought long and hard, and I said, maybe I could take her to the Reptile House at the Chicago Lincoln Park Zoo. Because they have this reptile house there that was an old Victorian building built like in 1896. And 100 years later, all the reptiles were still there because none of them died. Because it's almost impossible to kill a reptile. You turn off the heat and they just go to sleep. You stop feeding them and then they eat their young. So I figured this would be perfect, is I could bring her there because it's old and dark and cold and creepy and boring. Reptile houses are really boring. They don't do anything. They don't even blink. They just sit there staring at you. And I thought, well, maybe if I could get us in there at feeding time. So I went to one of the docents and I said, can you tell me when they feed the reptiles? And she said, oh, we're not allowed to tell anyone that. And so I gave her $20 because it is Chicago. And she said, well, I'm not supposed to let anyone know, but they only feed the snapping turtles once a month, and they're scheduled to be fed this Friday at 1 o'clock. And I said, oh, this is absolutely perfect. I'll make a date. We'll go to the zoo, and about 1 o'clock, she's going to start worried about getting tan. So we could go into this nice, dark reptile house, and then we could see the snapping turtles fed, and it'd just be incredibly romantic. And we go in there, and she goes straight for the boa constrictor. And over here in this corner, there's a bunch of little kids, 5th grade kids with a teacher and a couple teacher's aides checking out the chameleons, bored out of their skulls. Chameleons are a lot more fun in cartoons than they are in real life. And I go right over to the snapping turtle tank because I want a good seat. And it was this huge aquarium with just filled with snapping turtles. And behind it were these rocks to make it look like we're out in nature. And if you ducked way down, you could see over the rocks and into the preparation room that was behind all the tanks. And I could see the zookeeper starting to get the food ready. And I go, hypoxia? I believe they're about to feed the snapping turtles. And one of the teachers overhears me and she says, hey kids, do you want to see them feed the turtles? And the kids are like, yeah! And they all go rushing over and they shove us way back and pull all the kids in front so they're all right up against the glass. And then the zookeeper comes up with this big white 5-gallon pickle bucket. And you wonder, well, what's in there? Purina turtle chow? Maybe some yummy snappy treats? No. The bucket was filled with live mice. And these aren't the greasy gray mice you catch out in the shed. No, these are adorable white mice. The kind you buy a little kid when you can't afford a puppy. They have soft pink ears and big button eyes and little twitching whiskers. And she takes this bucket of mice and just pours it into a tank of starving snapping turtles. And for about 5 minutes, it was like watching a documentary on World War II. The water just started boiling and foaming and churning, splashing against the glass, and you couldn't see anything, but occasionally the water would part and you'd see like a little scene of horror. You see like one little mouse swimming as fast as he could towards the edge, but his entire bottom half is missing. And at this point, the kids are catatonic. They're in shock. teachers have no idea what to do. It's like, hey kids, do you want to go see the pandas? There are no pandas at Lincoln Park Zoo. They're just improvising at this point and trying to get them moving out of the... And at this point, something happened that I know is stuck with those kids the rest of their lives. They learned a lesson in the struggle against adversity, because somehow, some way, a little mouse managed to swim through all this chaos and get up on the rock. And the turtles would have none of that. They're still like reaching up and trying to snap him and pull him back in. And he climbs up to the second rock, and they can't reach him anymore. And he takes a couple breaths, and he shakes off all the water. And the zookeeper goes, blink. And this one little kid had enough. What do you do that for? It was home safe. He made it to the goal. You're supposed to let him go. The poor little kid learned for the first time in his life that happy endings only happen in Disney cartoons. And even the Goth girl was mad. She starts yelling at me, did you plan this? That is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And she turns around and she helps the teachers gather the children and calmly escort them out of the reptile house. And she walked into the sunlight and out of my life forever. I never saw her again. She probably doesn't even remember me, but if she does, she probably still hates me. But I did her a favor, because that was the day that she realized she's not a vampire. She realized she is a mammal. We are all mammals. We are intelligent. We are warm-blooded. We don't eat our young. That's why we feel sorry for the mice and not the poor turtles that haven't had a bite to eat for the past month. We are all together on Team Mammal. And if you keep reptiles as pets, you're sick. You are fighting on the wrong team. And that's why I want to encourage everyone tonight to use plastic straws.